content. One of the things I thought was really interesting, and something that I've been trying to do, is try to be as fair as I can in these discussions, because a lot of times, depending on who I'm speaking to, I just had a debate 2 days ago with this woman who's a feminist, and she started attacking men. So I started defending men, and I found myself in like this position where the only thing I was doing was defending men. With you, I do think like you do try to make an effort to be more fair. So this is one of the things you said that I really like. You said women are delusional and men are disenfranchised. Can you go over that concept? Because the women are delusional part, I think a lot of people get offended by, but it's not meant to be an insult. It actually is like what they think they can get, and what they can actually get are different. And that is the definition of delusion. Can you go over what you meant by that?
Yeah, there's a couple different sort of prongs to that one. First, I think you can look at a lot of the data through dating apps. I mean, OkCupid had a bunch of data where you could see they allowed their users to rank. So they allowed men to rank women from 1 to 5 and women to rank men from 1 to 5. And you could see that, the men ranking women had a nice bell curve. And so, there was sort of like an average distribution. But then women ranking men, it was disproportionately on the lower end, meaning that they found the majority of men to be not as attractive as they would like. And there's been other studies that are out there, like, asking men, if you found a partner that was an 8 out of 10, would that be sufficient for you? And on average, men are going to say yes. And on average, women are going to say no. And so women just generally have a higher standard, right? I mean, a lot of the research has shown this, that women date up and to the right. I'm sure that's, been talked about on your show quite a bit. And so when you take sort of evolutionary desire that's sort of hardwired and baked into women, and then you couple that with the narrative of modernity that is telling women, you shouldn't settle, right? Girl power, you shouldn't settle for anything less than what you deserve. It can really skew what you think you should be able to get in the market. And then you go on dating apps and, maybe you're a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. You're still probably likely to get attention and sexual attention specifically from men that are maybe quote unquote out of your league or above you in status, or better looking than you. And so you can get sex from a guy that is maybe an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. But then when you go to lock that man down and you go to get into a committed relationship, you find it very, very challenging. And so this is the delusional part, that women have been sort of sold a bill of goods that creates, and this is what a lot of women really did not like in the comment section on that one specific video where I talked about this. For many women, not all women, okay, I want to make it super clear. It's not all women that have these wild, unrealistic expectations. Some women are still down to earth. Some women are still very grounded in reality of what they can get, what they should get, what is good for them. But for some women, the idea or the version of the man that they want or think that they're entitled to only exists in their head. It doesn't exist outside in the real world, because society and modern therapy speak and social media has told them that your man should be absolutely everything. He should be your provider, your protector. He should be your coach. He should be your therapist. He should be your cheerleader. He should be the shoulder. Like, he should be absolutely everything. And then when she gets into a relationship with a man who, maybe hasn't developed some of those skill sets, or those things aren't priorities to him, she's disengaged, right? She's disappointed. And so I think there's a number of different factors. It's not just the kind of hardwiring that women have to date up and to the right. It's also a lot of the social narratives. And then it's the dating apps, right? The fact that women can go online and, they can see all these attractive men and have access to them in a way that they didn't before. And they're being encouraged to, quote unquote, never settle, because that somehow means that you're less of a woman. If you settle for a man who's at your level, and not some like 10 out of 10.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting. And I read some of that data. It was the top 20% of men get 63% of the right swipes. Oh, sorry. The top 10% of men get 63% of the right swipes. The top 20% of the men got 83% of the right swipes. 40% of men got that's the one that's crazy to me. The top 40% of men got 96% of the right swipes, which meant the bottom 60% of men were competing for 4% of women on those dating apps. The average woman is not interested in the average man. The average man is very much interested in the average woman. And like you said before, with some of these other ideas, my buddy Homath says that he goes, women get stuck on their highest setting. And this is something that I've seen. And I believe it's an evolutionary mismatch. You remember Dunbar's number, as an anthropologist named Dunbar, who said that humans throughout our history lived in tribes, maybe 115 to like 150 people. And if you notice, that's about the size of a military unit. We keep it about 150 people or smaller. The reason why that's as many faces as you can possibly remember, you can keep in your active memory. But we've done that because of social media. Now what we've done is women's hypergamous nature, like they do want to date up and to the right, like you said before. And what's happened is they weren't neither men nor women, and we can get into men being disenfranchised and how pornography has done that. We weren't designed to see this many faces, to have this much option. We have this, it's something Steve Jobs talked about. He's like, remember, there was several different iPads and several different versions of Apple products, and he narrowed it down to 3 because people had this dilemma of choice. We've given individuals the dilemma of choice, and it's causing them to be paralyzed because of so much choice that they believe they have. And like you said before, these women think that they're settling. Alex Datesike has this great chart where he shows that men said that they would settle for an 8, and women say they're settling for 5s. But the reality is, if you were to look across, they're not settling for 5s. They're settling for who they would probably have gotten in assortative mating. But because they deem men to be so unattractive in a short-term context, they start thinking that they're dating a 5 when they're dating someone who looks just like them. So it's a really interesting thing. So men being disenfranchised, like what do you mean by that?
A couple of things. I try and keep a good pulse on men, just by talking to the men that are in our programs and in the workshops that we're facilitating, but also just through the comments on YouTube. And it's very interesting to see how a lot of men are very frustrated when they hear the things that we just talked about.
Yeah.
And then, they've had maybe some bad dating experiences. They were betrayed. They were cheated on. They fell in love with a woman who, didn't love them back, and they get brokenhearted, and they take that as a sign or a signal that they should just check out entirely from women. And so women become put into a single bucket, right? Which is like, women bad. All women are the same. All women are this way. And therefore I shouldn't bother. And so guys are disenfranchised in this sense that what happens is, I've seen a lot of men stop trying to elevate themselves because they don't think that there's a point. So a lot of men have adopted this victimhood mentality when it comes to how they relate to women, and they've adopted a hopelessness, right? It's like, it's just hopeless.
Yeah.
So I'm not even going to bother. And it's like, well, that's arguably the least masculine frame that you can hold when relating to women. So you're adopting learned helplessness as a strategy to try and get women. Like, what do you think is going to happen, right? You're going to attract these women that, and we have confirmation bias, right? The human beings, we are literally designed to, our brain is designed to recognize patterns. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. And so when you have a bias about women, you will naturally look for the patterns that reaffirm your bias. And that means that that's going to play into how you date. So you're going to go out and you're going to be attracted to and attract women who are going to confirm your bias for you, and you never break out of that hole.
Yeah. And I think the good news, I had a discussion again when I had Dr. Buss on my program, was that men have so many different plays they can run to generate attraction. Women don't. Women have a few plays, but they don't have as many. Women's physical attractiveness means more in general to men. But for men, we can be funny. We can be the funny guy, the charismatic guy. We could sometimes be the rich guy. We could be the famous guy. We could be the tall, good looking guy. There's so many different plays that we can run. It doesn't just have to be, there's just several different options for us, which means men do have a chance. But I think what happens, kind of where I think the confusion is, in a short-term context, the better looking guy does win out. In the short context, meaning we're going up to you, a stranger in a bar, or we're using a dating app. In a short-term, unfamiliar context, that guy does win. And so the extreme version of that is what they call black pill. If you look up black pill ideology, which is only looks matter to women, and looks do matter more to women than women admit. Mack and Murphy recently talked about a study with this. And by the way, men do actually care more about a woman's money than they admit. That's another part of the study that came out. But when we come to that realization, if you get them from an unfamiliar environment to a familiar environment, which is why I recommend Social Circle to so many people, when you do that, then all of a sudden what happens is that, remember that bell curve we were talking about with men, for women, it's pushed way far to the left. That curve becomes way more like a bell curve, like a normal distribution, when you get women from an unfamiliar environment to a familiar environment. I ask women on my show all the time, has there ever been a guy you weren't that attracted to? Like, you didn't know whether or not you liked him, and then you got to know him, and then you found him attractive. And then the women constantly said, yes, I'm dating this guy. He was persistent, or like a friend of a friend introduced me, or something like that. Getting women from an unfamiliar environment to a familiar environment seems to be the way to get around this victim mentality that men have, and something that they can accomplish, which is why I highly recommend you have social alignments. Dr. Buss in Evolution of Desire talks about throughout history, men that have accomplished goals with other men have always had access to more resources and had access to more mating opportunities. So I think that's something where you're talking about these guys feel hopeless. That's where you take the hopelessness away, is you give them an objective, something like that to build on. If you're a successful man, sick of lone wolfing it through life, and you want to build a high status social circle with successful guys like you and date incredible high quality women, well, that's what Men of Action is all about. We will help you forge alliances with power players, celebrate epic nights in luxurious locations like Monaco, and completely transform your dating life. You'll go from settling with scraps on dating apps to enjoying amazing dates with legitimate models. If this sounds interesting to you, click the first link in the description and I'll show you the step-by-step blueprint that 2,000 men all across the world have used to build elite social circles.